Hey, Daryl here, and this is my daily devotional. In Leviticus chapter 16, we have the instructions for the Day of Atonement. Great strides were taken in instructing how this was to occur with the bulls and the goats and how their blood was to be shared in atonement for the sins, the communal sins of Israel, the individual sins of Israel. It says in verse 15, "He shall then slaughter the goat for the sin offering for the people, and take its blood behind the curtain, and do with it as he did with the bull's blood. He shall sprinkle it on the atonement cover and in front of it." Great instructions were given to follow the sacrifices for the sins of Israel. And then, in verse 20, when Aaron has finished making atonement for the most holy place, the tent of meeting and the altar, he shall bring forward, here we go, the live goat. He is to lay both hands on the head of the live goat and confess over it all the wickedness and rebellion of the Israelites, all their sins, and put them on the goat's head. All right? So picture with me. We have those goats sacrificed whose blood was taken in to the holy place and sprinkled there on the altar and in front of the altar. And then there was the live goat that they would take their hands and pray over and symbolically place their sins on that live goat. Then this live goat was taken out into the desert, into the wilderness, and set free with somebody to watch that goat as it would eventually die of hunger. Going on to verse 26. The man who releases the goat as a scapegoat, that's the origin of the term scapegoat, must wash his clothes and bathe himself with water. Afterwards, he may come into the camp. So he goes out, he watches this, it dies eventually, and then he comes back to camp. He's instructed before he does so, washing his clothes, so he is clean as he comes back in. Verse 27, the bull and the goat for the sin offering, whose blood has brought into the most holy place to make atonement, must be taken outside the camp. Their hides, flesh, and offal are to be burned up. The man who burns them must wash his clothes and bathe himself in water. Afterward, he must come into the camp. Now, I'm making a point here. Try to follow along. This is God's instructions for Israel, Day of Atonement, or what we may be familiar with the term Yom Kippur, as many Jewish folks would still celebrate today. Yom Kippur. Now, this is the instructions for Israel for the forgiveness of sins. And then you see the scapegoat, where their sins were symbolically placed upon and set free, and then eventually died in the wilderness. Now here we go. You ready? This instruction was carried out in Israel's history up until the time in about 60 AD when the Roman Empire destroyed the temple in Jerusalem. Now hear me out. Israel has not been able to fulfill these instructions for the atonement of sin, Yom Kippur, since the destruction of the temple. The scapegoat. Oh man, how Israel has missed the scapegoat. The scapegoat was Jesus Christ, who died on the cross to save us from our sins. Upon him was placed our sins. As symbolically, the sins were placed on this goat, the scapegoat. Now, this is, okay, let me just take this one step further. When they celebrate Yom Kippur today, those who have not received Jesus as Messiah, this is the very passage that they read in their celebration of the Day of Atonement. In other words, because they don't have the temple to be able to go through these ceremonial acts of atonement, They simply read this. In other words, they know what happens. They know what probably should be going on, but the temple doesn't exist today, so they can't literally do it. And they miss the wonderful truth that Jesus was the scapegoat on the cross. Oh man, if you don't get anything out of this devotional, get this. Jesus is our scapegoat, and our sins were placed on him. God bless you. Good day.